Hi, this is Debbie with Cheyenne Wyoming Urban Gardener in the part 2. Welcome back. And we are just going through the garden, seeing what's coming in so far. And we are starting to get cabbages out of the garden, or we haven't harvested them yet. We're getting pretty close to it. I'm just leaving them in here. Unless they split or something, they can continue to grow, and that's what we've done. We've got some fairy round Dutch cabbages in here. We've got the red acre cabbage, which to me, the red cabbages are taking the longest. And I'm hoping that I find a different variety that maybe is a little bit more short season than these guys were. They are starting to really fill out, and you can see they're starting to produce heads, but they just took so long. And I need a much earlier variety than those. And we had a fall harvest that we've planted in here, or fall plants that we've put in here, and they're actually getting up to size a lot faster than the ones that we planted in the spring are doing. So they have really grown by leaps and bounds, and we've got some more of the fairy round Dutch, and then we have some Savoy cabbage, and another one called ball head in here. So we planted those, and they're doing really well. A lot faster than the other guys were. And then we've got a bunch of cabbage that we had picked up at Menards at the very beginning of the season. There was a 6-pack, and I picked them up. They were just so pretty, and they are producing heads as well. They're towards the back. Very pretty little cabbage plants. They're not super huge. I would say the heads are going to be probably about 5 or 6 pounds. But nice heads of cabbage. We've got a lot of cabbage this season, so we'll have a lot of kraut and a lot of coleslaw and all kinds of things that we will put away. And just all looking beautiful. Just everything all together. Everything is so green and lush right now. And we're getting a lot of moisture being held into the garden now by the plants becoming so large. That's one of the reasons why I do a lot of companion planting. And a lot of this close planting like this, I would say, especially with the cabbages, I probably do square foot on those, even though it asks for on the back of the packages to have them 18 inches apart and stuff like that. I don't. They're closer together than that, especially with the fairy round Dutch, because they are very small, compact cabbages. And as you can see, they're very round, and I basically trim off the bottom leaves. I need to get in here and do that with these red acre cabbage, but I trim off the bottom leaves, and that leaves a lot more space than you would typically have if you just left them without trimming or anything like that. And it doesn't affect it whatsoever as far as trimming the leaves off the bottom. It actually helps to focus more into the production of the head. So you're actually doing a benefit by doing that on these, and so that's what I do, and it plus gives you more space. And there's one of our white blooms on the bachelor buttons, and a purple bloom. Just really pretty little pop of color in there. And of course we have our zinnias over here and our calendula. We're getting lots of different colors of zinnias now. I had mostly pink that started off, and then I've gotten some oranges now finally. And I even have some whites in here, and we've got some that have some really weird stripes on them. And here's a white one, and another orange one right there. These are much smaller, more compact variety than I have on the other side, which I'll show you in a moment. Looks like we're going to get one that's striped right here. Here's another white one, and then our calendula through here, we ended up with a lot of different colors of calendula, mostly yellow, mostly orange, but we had some peaches and some limes, and then we're starting to collect the seeds now. And our other guys are getting ready to start blooming as well. And then we've got a couple of zinnias in there that look like they volunteered from last season that are going to come up and bloom. We're still getting peas in here, everybody, even though the vines are looking pretty rough. They're still producing. So we've still been pulling peas. Sometimes I'll just come out here and pop one in my mouth every day, pretty much. But lots of peas, and it looks like I got a couple of weeds in there I need to pull as well. When it gets this wild in the garden, the tame, then into the wild, It gets kind of difficult to keep up with all of the weeds, but I do try to keep as many out of here as I can, because they do rob energy from the other plants and nutrients. And then we have some cosmos in here. Those are really pretty. So far I've only had pink cosmos, but I'm sure there'll be some other colors in there. Our tomatoes are producing like crazy. We've got one of our first super sauce tomatoes that's changing color now. So there that one is, just about ready to turn red. And I did pull my first larger tomato from the San Marzano tomatoes that had turned red this morning. But the vines are just nuts now. They are just growing by leaps and bounds, especially the giant ox hearts. And we have tomatoes set on all of the giant ox hearts now. They're not very big, but they get big quick. So you can see they're just going nuts. Lots of tomatoes. Our onions are starting to finish up, some of them. Not all of them, just some of them. And we did get some nice medium-sized onions in here, which is a lot better than we had last season, and a lot better than I was expecting. We have some small ones too, but the small ones are still getting bigger, because we did kind of stagger plant or succession plant our onions. We had a couple of different varieties, and I picked up some seed onions a little bit later than the first ones that I picked up, and they're just now starting to bulb up, so they still have plenty of time to bulb. But all the tops still looking great. They really haven't died back, but we did have a couple of them bend over, which means they're usually finished when they bend. But we still have a lot of them still getting big too and haven't bent over. We did end up losing one tomato plant right here. That's again the San Marzanos that came with blight to begin with. There's still a little bit of greenery in it, so I'm leaving it right now, and there's a couple tomatoes set on it, and they're continuing to grow, so we'll see if they actually come up to fruition. But the rest of them have surpassed them, the ones that are still healthy, but we're starting to get a little bit of browning in there too. So these guys were just not good for our garden. We won't be growing the San Marzanos again. And I know a lot of people out there that do it and have success with those, but I have a lot more success with the super sauce tomatoes and the ox hearts and things like that. I did not care for the San Marzanos at all. They did not get as super huge as I hoped that they would. So I'm not pleased with them. The one that was diseased did pull out of it, and it's starting to green up and starting to grow, and you can see most of the leaves that were brown are now gone, and they're greening. But unfortunately I'm not seeing any blooms, and I'm not seeing any fruit on that particular tomato. So I'm not sure if it's going to do anything, since it is now starting to grow, or not. We're getting very late in the season for it to occur, so I'm not sure. But the ones that we do have that are fairly healthy are loaded with San Marzano tomatoes, so hopefully we'll get something out of those guys. And we do have the old German tomatoes in here as well, and we do have some old German tomatoes set on the plants. Really difficult to see when they're still green, but we do have some pretty nice sized tomatoes in there. And then of course this is our other beans that we have. These are the rattlesnake pole beans, Kentucky Wonder, and we have a couple other varieties in here, as well as our top crop bush beans and our contender bush beans. And we're still pulling about a half gallon to a gallon of beans every day out of here now. There's just basically beans hanging everywhere, and it only takes a little over a day right now for them to really start producing. Once they start the bean on there, like this will turn into this in a day. So those are some beans that we're getting ready to harvest here in just a moment. But you can see they're starting to really put on, and they are reaching the top of the trellis on some of them and climbing over, and we just have beans now hanging everywhere. So we've had a lot of beans in a small space, and plus we still have beans over near the corn. And here's our other zinnias. Most of these are turning out to be pink, but there's still a lot of them to bloom. And these are the other red curry squash. They are producing. So we do have red curry squash in there. I'll show you one of them right there. But they are by far not as big as the ones in the main garden. They are running, and they're actually starting to get into the tomatoes now. So I'm going to have to go in here and try to wrangle these vines a little bit. But they're not as big as the one in the main section of the garden. And you can see all of our tomatillos on the last tomatillo left in the main part of the garden. And this guy is about 6 feet across now, or in circumference is about 6 feet around. Look how many tomatillos are hanging, and I was just hoping that they had pollinated, and they did, fortunately, before the other one got killed off. Basically broke off in the storm. And we have tomatoes all throughout here, and these tomatoes, as you can see, are pretty shaded most of the day, and they're still producing like crazy. We've got one tomato here that I think got some sunburn because we get a lot of sun in this area, just about to right here, and then it gets real shaded. But right here we get a lot of focus of sun, as you can see, and this area, and I think this guy got sunburned. But the top part is greening up and is doing okay now, and it is producing. You see little stalks sticking out there that is putting on a tomato, and that guy right beside of it is the same variety, and we've got tomatoes on it, and it's perfectly fine. So that one got sunburned because it got a lot of focus of sun. So that looks really pretty. And then our sunflower there is just about done. It has bloomed and gone, bending over, and I think the squirrels leave it alone because of all of the tomatoes in here. Kind of trip them up, I think. We do have eggplants that are growing like crazy over here. They have set on the vines, and then of course we've got the other tomatillo here, and this guy looks a lot different than the tomatillo in the garden, even though it still looks similar, but still at the same time a lot different. So I'm not real sure if this is a tomatillo or a ground cherry. Maybe someone can tell me, but it looks like a tomatillo to me as far as what is producing thus far. And it is starting to produce like crazy. So that tells me tomatillo in my book. And as you can see, we've got a couple of eggplants back here that are still shaded and have not produced as yet, but they are starting to bloom. And you can see an eggplant starting right there. Fruit. And this one has gotten just super huge, and we've got an eggplant on it that started down near the bottom, and then we've got some more that are going on. And then we've got some sunflowers in here that are starting to bloom as well. You can see that little guy right there. That is one of the shorter varieties. And then this one right here is starting to bloom. And then we have blooms throughout this whole section of shorter varieties of sunflowers. And another tomatillo there. And our Kennebec potatoes have not started dying back as yet. I keep doing updates on this. There has been some laying over. You can see this. And a little bit of yellowing, but not any super huge difference. And we've actually got a couple of them blooming again. So second set of blooms right there. And we actually have some blooms on this one, which I know is a second set of blooms because this one did bloom. So pretty interesting stuff. I've never had them bloom twice. There's another one. And then we've got our Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes over here, and I haven't seen any fruit as yet, but they are blooming like crazy in here. So it's going to be soon, but I will not grow this variety again because they just take so long, and we don't have that long of a season. And this is my grandson's little garden, and he is growing the heck out of a pepper. And we harvested some radishes out of here. He's got more radishes planted right there. And his lemon basil, he loves basil. And his little broccoli, and it is a broccoli, is starting to produce. And his tomatoes, his particular tomato plant stayed pretty small. And then now it has decided it's going to grow like crazy. So his tomato plant is starting to get pretty huge now, and we're tying it up like as when it starts getting a little bit bigger. And he has a borage in here as well, after we pulled the radishes out. So his little borage is starting to bloom. You've got a little bloom stalk in there. And we have some more basil right here that is getting ready to bloom and set seeds that I'll be collecting out of this pot. And this one's set in the second part of the main garden for a while, and then we took it out of here and just put it more in the sun, and now it is producing some bloom heads and seeds. And then we've got our lemon cucumber over here. We've got lemon cucumbers that are beginning to set on here. It is blooming like crazy. You can see all of that in there. Our Guido Cussaman squash behind it is blooming like crazy as well. So you can see those, and they're running. So we've gotten some really nice radishes out of here. You can see some radishes there in the back. Because they've been a little bit more shaded, they've done better. And then, of course, all of our potatoes and our Tahitian squash is starting to invade into the potatoes now. So you can see that in there. And those guys just get huge. You got to have the space for the Tahitian squash, because if you grow those guys, they get about 50 to 100 feet long. So we basically let them go down the rows, and then back up the row, and then down the row, and then back up the row, and then now they invade into the potatoes. But we try to keep them as manageable as possible. There's our other Kellogg's breakfast tomato. It's just as big as the other one. Lots of blooms. And it looks like it's going to set fruit. We've got a couple of them. When they start to turn down like this, that means that they're trying to set some fruit. So it looks like that's what it is doing. Again, this is the beginning of that Tahitian squash that's invading into the potatoes. So this is the beginning part. You can see the stalk going into the ground. And it actually goes around, and you can see the zinnias. Goes around the zinnias, through the corn over here. And here's one of the runners poking out here. It has several runners on it, so some will poke out in every direction. And it keeps going through here. You can see the squash vine through here. Wraps around, goes back up through the corn, and then comes back around down to here. You can see more vines there. And then you can see another runner there that ends up in there. And then on and on and on and on. We only have 4 Tahitian squash in here, and they have done that. So they just basically run up and down the rows, up and down the rows, and they get just enormous. And they are starting to produce now. We've got a couple of Tahitian squash in there. They're not very big, and I would have to climb in to try to find them and potentially step on things, so I won't do that. We've got our nasturtium over here that is wanting to bloom. They are getting massive, and they're a little shaded back here, so I'm surprised. Because it said full sun with these, but nope, they like the shade a little bit. And then, of course, we have all of our beans and our corn all in here, and our corn is now pretty much finished. We're just letting the ears sit for a while so they get their kernels, but for the most part, I think they are already just about done, because they are nice and firm. But we will leave them. It usually takes about 6 weeks after the tasseling before the ears are finished. And we're just going to leave them until the end of the season, and we'll see what we get at that point. But everything in here looking beautiful. Look at all the colors of zinnias we have now. We got reds and oranges and yellows. There's a yellow down there. And various shades of pinks. Mostly pinks back here. These are the first ones that started blooming. And most of them have turned out pink. But one of them is super huge. This is a California Giant. And a couple of other huge ones in different areas. Lighter pink varieties. And we'll save the seeds off of these, of course. And we save seeds off of most things, just not things that have any danger of cross-pollination. And our hibiscus, these are the ones we keep pulling flowers off of. And we have started to produce and sell to people that have wanted them. So we have about 10 to 15 blooms per day. They're pretty huge. So these are nice big flowers. And people can make tea out of them. You can use them for hibiscus sugar, hibiscus syrup, all kinds of things. And then we have our Burpee pickling cucumbers at the base. They're starting to bloom now and getting pretty nice runners on them. And they've really enjoyed being at the base of the hibiscus. And these guys are now getting pretty big for the second set of pots that we've had for them. So we may get these transplanted into even larger pots. But we don't have enough time to put any cucumbers at the bases of them, but we may put some spinach or something. And then we had one pot remaining of celosia that I had potted up for people to take, and this last one was remaining, and it's starting to bloom, and it turns out that it is red and pink. And then there is our planting of various seeds in here. Our basils are up, our pansies are up, the tarragon is up, and fennel is up, but I have not seen anything on the summer savory. We have not gotten any summer savory this year. We had some last year, we had some the year before, not this year. And no English lavender as yet, but those usually take a really long time to start. And our second planting of lettuce in here, looking beautiful and starting to really fill out now, and I got to get in there and weed that a little bit. And our mints, our orange mint, lemon mints are still looking amazing. I did pick up some bee balm, and we're saving the seeds off of those. We did transplant it, but this is also a perennial. So we did transplant it. We're saving seeds as well from these. And I think my daughter planted a couple more seeds in there at the base. And then my grandson stuck in his little light. And we got our Gerbera daisies are still producing flowers. There's a new one right there. And then we have our other lettuces over here that we have been harvesting. They are delicious. And all of our little sun gold cherry tomatoes. I've pulled a lot off of those in the last few days. I got some more yellow pear tomatoes to pull right here. And this guy is now taller than its stake. And then these are the suckers that were on this plant that I did not take. And as you can see, they are producing tomatoes just as big as the main stalk. So I have the personal idea that cutting the suckers does not mean that you're going to get better fruit. In fact, you're probably going to get more fruit if you leave the suckers alone. And there you go. Now I have harvested some of the suckers off of these just to produce more plants. But I did leave 3 of the suckers on here to produce, and they're all very large yellow pear tomatoes. And that is a cherry variety of tomatoes, so they're not super huge to begin with. But these are the biggest yellow pear tomatoes that I have ever produced. And they're pretty good sized. And then there is our lemon mint, looking beautiful. Another San Marzano that we have over here. We thought originally was a sun gold cherry tomato, but it's turned out it is a San Marzano. And I did get one off of those guys today that had turned red. And we do have some Sharonte cantaloupe that's set. So we got a couple of those in there that set on the vines. And so we will hopefully get some cantaloupes out of those guys before the end of the season. And then we've had loads of cucumbers in here as well, white spine cucumbers. I have harvested and harvested and harvested, and I've got more to harvest right now. I see them dangling down. So you can see some cucumbers through there. And I think my phone battery is about to die, so we will go through another section at a later time. But anyway, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out. And we will see you in the next video.